welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do a little video series about my Lotus Elise that I'm currently in the process of restoring, having neglected it unfortunately for the last 3 years whilst I swanned around in another Elise that I owned that's now been sold. So I want to get it back on the road. It's a car I love dearly, and it's very, very personal to me, a car that I never really want to sell, a car that I've had for the last 6 years, and it's hopefully going to be in my life until I'm so old and decrepit that I can no longer get into it. So I really want to do the best that I can for the car and get it restored. And I'm going to try and take you along for that journey. I've already done quite a lot of the work, which unfortunately I haven't filmed, which is a bit of a stupid YouTuber mistake. But I wanted to sort of take you back to the early days of the car. I did film a YouTube video about my Elise many years ago that went on a different channel that never really went anywhere. I didn't really do anything with. So I thought, as I'm here driving an Elise, the final edition, the 240, I'm in a Lotus, I thought, why not do a little intro for that video? So here you go. Let's cut to that video now, and you'll see my Elise probably within, I think it was the first year of ownership that I had it, and there's a younger version of me talking around the car. Roll that video.
Internet, I'm David, and this is David on Cars. Welcome to my new YouTube channel. I would tell you a little bit about myself, but it's fairly boring, and I'm sure you'll come to know me as the channel grows. But first thing first, I thought I'd introduce you to my car. This is my 2001 Lotus Elise. I've had this since May of last year, and it is a bit of a banger actually. It's not exactly perfect. I love it dearly, but it needs a hell of a lot of work. It's got quite a few upgrades on the car though, but many more to come, hopefully over the next year or so as I upgrade it. So I'll show you around some of the bad points in a bit, but let's start with the good stuff. So starting at the back here, we have a tubular exhaust, and we have a much larger rear diffuser, much bigger than the standard one. Also on the standard Lotuses, if you've ever seen them, they have something in this sort of space here, but this has got one of the rear panel delete kits. No other reason other than the fact that it looks fairly cool. So yeah, so it's got a aftermarket tubular exhaust. It's just the back box only. The headers and the catalytic converter are all standard Lotus items. Underneath the bonnet here, I'll try and balance it up so that you can see it's a Rover K series. So for those of you that know, it's the same sort of engine they put in MGFs, Rover 25s, and a whole host of other products that came from Rover. This one was slightly bespoke to Lotus, but still suffered from some of the same sort of head gasket failures and overheating problems that the other Rover units suffered from. Now, this car had a long history before I bought it, and I could see from looking at the history that it had a couple of head gasket failures, and when the last one happened, the owner had the engine rebuilt. It went off to a company called Sabre, and they ported the head, so it's got a slightly sort of fruitier block on it, so it pushes out a little bit more power. Also with the exhaust and this ITG carbon fibre airbox you can see here, it's also probably pushing out a bit more power thanks to that. I don't know exactly how much power, but probably about 135 horsepower. It's about 15 up from the stock horsepower of 120. Coming around to the side, please excuse the mud. It was quite muddy trying to get down the track from where I'm filming today. You'll notice it's a bit lower than a standard Elise if you've ever seen a normal Elise. This is actually sitting on Nitron suspension, so it's sitting slightly lower than a standard Elise, and it's got the adjustable suspension. The car also benefits from stiffer anti-roll bars. It's got solid engine mounts and a whole host of other bits and bobs that didn't come from the factory. Coming around the front here is where most people notice the most obvious problems. It's got quite a bit of damage. Now, I bought the car with most of the damage, that you can see here, this cracked clam, and I don't know whether it's coming out on the video here, but there's the paintwork's not in particularly great condition. But I paid a good price for the car, and I knew that the long-term plan was to get the car fixed anyway, so that's not really much of an issue. This splitter I actually added on, but unfortunately after a little off on a track day recently, as well as a few sort of speed bumps and whatnot, we've got a bit of damage here as well. Also, this now flexes quite a lot, which I found at over certain speeds, this flexes down and can catch on cat's eyes and some bumps, which isn't great. So coming back around the side of the car, again, the bodywork isn't in the greatest condition in a lot of places. Unfortunately, just down here, so you can see there is a hole in the bodywork, so that needs to be fixed as well, plus all the paintwork's been fairly chipped. But this car is, what, now about 15 years old, so it's to be expected that it isn't going to be in the best condition. Now, if I just open up the door here, here's the interior. Again, it's because it's an early car, it has the standard sort of early interior, no air conditioning, nothing fancy. You've got manual winders on the windows, and actually at the moment mine haven't got a stereo, and I don't think you see there aren't any speakers in the front grills as well. In the process of changing those over. Inside it's fairly standard apart from the Momo wheel, and I've got a little knob warmer because it's cold on the winter days. It does have a 4-point harness. I don't know whether you can see a little bit there, but other than that, fairly standard inside. I'm not going to do a great deal to the interior. I might get the seats retrimmed because they're looking a little bit tired, but other than that, just tidying it up and making it a little bit neater. I haven't bothered to clean the car. I wanted to show you guys the car as it is on a normal daily basis, which is pretty shoddy, I must admit, so apologies for that. But yeah, so this is my car. So yeah, so this will be a bit of a project for me. I'm planning to do quite a lot to the car, and I intend to do quite a few videos on sort of what I plan to do. I'm a typical bloke, my mind changes every 5 minutes about what I want to do to the car and what my overall plans are. So join me in a second and I'll tell you what it's like to drive. So, what is it like to drive? Well, actually not as good as it should be.
probably tell from the way the camera's shaking that the suspension is pretty stiff, partly due to the fact that I've got a cheap eBay mount for my camera, but also the Nitron suspension and the particular springs that the previous owner fitted to these are really, really stiff. Problem with that is on the road it doesn't really have any compliancy, so it never really feels like you can lean on the car, never really feels like you can push it, so I really struggle to get the most out of the car. It always feels like it's on a knife edge, even at 7/10, which isn't a great thing for a Lotus. Lotuses are all about balance and feel. Now, I've driven quite a few. Actually, I have 2 of these Elises at the moment, although the other one I'm going to try to sell. But the problem is that this car isn't as good as it should be, but it's easily fixable. I think the Nitrons are going to go. That's my plan, at least. They've been on the car for quite a long time and probably are in need of a refurb. When you start factoring in the cost of refurbs, new springs, and all the other bits and pieces, it does start to get quite expensive. And there's a particular make of shock absorbers that I'm quite interested to try out. And if I do decide to go down that route, I'll do a whole video on that at a later date if I definitely decide to go that route. But other than that, the car is fundamentally a really good, solid platform for me to build a great car from. The suspension is a bit of a sour point, and it does sort of kind of destroy some of the enjoyment that I can get from this car. It's great on a track, although even saying that, I did a track day recently, although it was a bit wet, and it was great up to the point, and then all of a sudden the car just rotated for no particular reason. I wasn't lifting off, I wasn't accelerating hard, it just snapped. And I want a car that's a little bit more predictable than that. I'm not an amazing driver, I'm not a race driver, I just enjoy driving for fun. So from that point of view, I want this car to be a little bit more enjoyable. I want to be able to live with it a bit more. So, and I want to be able to use it whenever I like. I want to, you know, just think about getting in it and just go out for a long drive. Whereas now I'm kind of thinking, oh well, the weather has to be right and the conditions have to be right. So that point of view, it's not ideal. The good thing is that the rest of the stuff that makes these Lotuses great is still intact. So the steering is fantastic, the brakes are fantastic. I mean, this car doesn't have ABS, doesn't have servos. You know, the brake pressure that you put in is the brake pressure that is applied. But there's so much feel, and once you get used to the way that feels, it's absolutely fantastic and really, really enjoyable. And like I say, the steering, it's so direct, you know, you can really just place it wherever you want. It's the same as any Elise that I've driven. Some of the early ones are the same, and the really, really new ones, the brand new ones, are all exactly the same as well. So from that point of view, it's good. And even though it's only got a little 1.8 engine and it's only got about 135 horsepower, it really does go quite well. So there you go. So that's a little introduction to my car and what it looked like then. We're going to do a follow-up video soon with a little bit more information about what it's like now and a bit of more of a walk around about the car, and then I'll talk you through some of my plans for the car as well. But I hope you liked the video. If you did, remember to hit that like button, subscribe for plenty more videos to come, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.